The most SummerSlam time of the year is once again upon us, with the Summer Spectacular only 2 weeks away. Now in brown, the most summery color of all. Thank you, Cleveland. Earlier this year, we took a look at the best match from every WrestleMania, and it was a ton of fun, so why not do that again with the other big show on the WWE calendar? Rest assured, there will be a worst version of this list, because what near 40-year-old show doesn't have a little bit of good and a little bit of bad? Thankfully for present Tempest, now is the time for the good. I'm Tempest, hailing from partsFUNknown, and this is the greatest match from every SummerSlam. But before we get on with our list, make sure of course that you like this video, subscribe, and enable notifications to always on so you never miss a fun list just like it. And if you like video game content, why don't you check out our new channel Control Freaks, where we play the best couch co-op, competitive, and spooky games around. You'll see a clip from one of them at the end. 1988, the Mega Powers versus the Mega Bucks. Usually, power and money would go hand in hand and they'd all be evil. Side note, shout out to the 80s for Miss Elizabeth's swimsuit bottom being so racy that it was the big spot of the match. Wish I could show these people what Liv Morgan's up to these days. 1989, the Ultimate Warrior versus Rick Rude. Maybe the most consistent rivalry of the Ultimate Warrior's career. Would that be fair to say? Between solid matches at WrestleMania 5 here and SummerSlam 1990, I think it just might be. 1990, the Hart Foundation versus Demolition. Bret Appreciation Part 1, God bless the tag teams providing actually great wrestling matches to the end of the Hulkamania era. Bret in a best of 3 falls match with a title change given plenty of time. More please. 1991, Bret Hart vs. Mr. Perfect. Bret Appreciation Part 2, the Solo Star Edition. I mean, it may not have had 3 falls, but it has the other boxes checked. If you had a match embodying the Intercontinental Championship of the era, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better one than this. 1992, Bret Hart vs. British Bulldog. Bret Appreciation Part 3, the Dave Bradshaw was their edition. The match virtually all British pay-per-view main events are compared against, at least in Dave's mind. 1993, Bret Hart vs. Jerry Lawler. Bret Appreciation Part 4, the Overcoming the Evil Clown edition. Doesn't matter if this is only 6 minutes, ends in DQ, and follows a match with an evil clown, Bret was the first Mr. SummerSlam and maximized the minutes he was given. 1994, Bret Hart vs. Owen Hart. Bret Appreciation Part 5, the My Brother Bret edition. At the time, this was the best cage match ever, but even still, sometimes I wonder how magical Bret vs. Owen for the title would have been had they had the ladder match Bret had wanted them to have. 1995, Shawn Michaels vs. Razor Ramon. How do you follow a revolutionary new match that many viewed as perfect? Well, you make the more exciting man in the match the babyface this time so the people are actually meant to cheer him. Yeah, that'll do. 1996, Shawn Michaels vs. Vader. Even Shawn throwing a tantrum and 2 separate restarts couldn't ruin the only highlight of SummerSlam 1996. Somehow the exact same thing can be said about our most previous entry too. Funny that. 1997, Bret Hart vs. The Undertaker. More Bret Appreciation! Shawn's work as special guest referee accidentally costing Undertaker the WWE title is still being used as the framework for referee bollocks decades later and served as a great finish to an otherwise great match as well. 1998, The Rock vs. Triple H. The eternal rivalry between The Rock and Triple H has many chapters detailed on our Wrestle Talk original on the subject, but an often overlooked one is the pair having a great ladder match together. You wouldn't think it given their styles, but grit over spectacle and an MSG crowd in 1998 went a long way. 1999, Mankind vs. Triple H vs. Steve Austin. Steve Austin, in addition to being one of the greatest brawlers and technicians in wrestling history, is also one clumsy fellow at times, highlighted here by managing to flip over the ropes, get completely tied up, and hook his knee brace on the rope so he couldn't escape. Highlight of the whole show if you ask me. 2000, TLC 1. It may be a ladder match with more furniture, but if you're going to establish the TLC match as a new classic stipulation, you want a match like this to take the lead with its death-defying stunts. Guys dangling from the ring, missed swanton bombs, Matt Hardy's perilous plunge, Lita bonking her head on the ladder. Honestly, that might be the thing that makes me cringe the most. 2001, Kurt Angle vs. Steve Austin. The best match to ever end in a DQ. Not only because the match preceding the finish was brilliant, but because the DQ serviced the story of this cowardly Austin out of options against an Olympic hero who could not be beaten. One of the best ever. 2002, Triple H vs. Shawn Michaels. The build for this match may not have made a lot of sense, but thankfully Shawn Michaels is the kind of wrestler who could be out of a WWE ring for 4.5 years and come back like he never missed a day. I say the kind of wrestler, but he may be in a category by himself on that one. 2003, Kurt Angle vs. Brock Lesnar. The least remembered of their trilogy, but still fantastic in its own right. The only one where Kurt got his win back, but he did it as a superb babyface, giving Brock more of a challenge than the shark he F5'd in the commercial for the show. 2004, Randy Orton vs. Chris Benoit. The forgotten SummerSlam main event for very obvious reasons, but also one of the best matches in the young career of Randy Orton, and one of the only times Chris Benoit got to simply defend the title in the main event of a pay-per-view. 2005, Rey Mysterio vs. Eddie Guerrero. WWE has to run this back with Rhea and Liv, right? Like Dom sitting in the front row with a social worker and everything. Whether they would be able to match the quality of two of WWE's best ever having a messy, dangerous, and entertaining ladder match is yet to be seen, but it would be a tall task. 2006, Edge vs. John Cena. You know, if I have to see one more sign that says if blank wins, we riot, I'm gonna start a riot. Empty threats. You don't mean it, you cowards. No one rioted when Edge won this very good SummerSlam main event in John Cena's hometown. If you're not in the Hammerstein Ballroom at an ECW show, I don't want to hear it. 2007, John Cena vs. Randy Orton. John Cena vs. Randy Orton on a positive list. I mean, this was still new at the time, but rest assured, their match at SummerSlam 2009 will receive no such praise with its Brett DiBiase run-in. Brett DiBiase appreciation part never. 2008, Edge vs. The Undertaker. An actually brilliantly told Hell in a Cell match with a simple story of Edge using his strengths to try and overcome Undertaker in Hell in a Cell, only to be smoten for his sins. And then thrown in an actual Christian depiction of hell. Makes it a bit wacky, but the match is still good. 2009, Jeff Hardy vs. CM Punk. That's one big-ass swanton. I know Jeff Hardy is kinda known for such things, but my god, what a way to put an exclamation mark on the best singles TLC match we had seen to that point. Just ignore Jeff digivolving into The Undertaker at the end. 2010, Team Cena vs. Team Nexus. Not often you'll see this match on a positive list, but this is a bad SummerSlam with very few redeeming qualities, so John Cena burying 7 guys at once in a solid main event match will have to do. 2011, Randy Orton vs. Christian. This is a real comfort match of mine. A great plunder match putting to bed a fantastic rivalry that is maybe the best of Orton's career. Would have been nice to ever get to see Christian get a proper run as world champion in WWE without Orton stomping methodically on that dream's limbs, but I'll take the great matches. 2012, Chris Jericho vs. Dolph Ziggler. I love how WWE pitched this as Chris Jericho finally winning the big one after having a 2012 where he exclusively lost on pay-per-view. I mean, I wouldn't usually consider winning an opening match against a mid-carder to be the big one, but at least it was the best match of a middling SummerSlam. 2013, Brock Lesnar vs. CM Punk. What wasn't a middling SummerSlam was this from 2013, complete with the 2 best matches WWE put on all year. While Cena and Bryan may have carried more significance, Brock and Punk's high-octane Extreme Rules match takes the cake. Punk hits a GTS to the gut, perhaps on accident, or perhaps to take advantage of Brock's diverticulitis. Who's to say? 2014, John Cena vs. Brock Lesnar. One of the most unique pay-per-view main events in WWE history. It remains surreal to think it actually happened even 10 years later. If you have to give Cena the title again at this point in his career, this is a hell of a way to justify it. 2015, John Cena vs. Seth Rollins. It's a shame this match is best remembered for Jon Stewart's shenanigans and not the 19 minutes of brilliant wrestling that came before it, because truthfully, Seth beating John Cena to win a second belt should have been the biggest highlight of his WWE title reign. And I guess it is, but also Jon Stewart. 2016, John Cena vs. AJ Styles. The run of John Cena wrestling the breakout internet darling of the year at SummerSlam made for many great matches, but none greater than this with the 2016 Wrestler of the Year, AJ Styles. Helps that Cena loses all of these SummerSlam matches. Gotta love that. 2017, Brock Lesnar vs. Braun Strowman vs. Samoa Joe vs. Roman Reigns. They did the match. They did the monster match. The monster match. It was a graveyard match. I'm surprised no one ended up in a grave after the destruction left behind by one of the most bonkers car crash matches ever in WWE. 2018, AJ Styles vs. Samoa Joe. Not the first match on this list to end in DQ, but while a match like Austin vs. Angle justified its finish, this one felt like an attempt to stretch this story out a while longer. It does enough to earn its place atop SummerSlam 2018, but in hindsight, Joe should have just won the title here. 2019, Seth Rollins vs. Brock Lesnar. When the bell rings, this Toronto crowd was not f***ing with babyface Seth Rollins after the horrendous 2019 he had to this point, but by the end, they were all losing their minds to see him win back the Universal title. I know, because I was one of them. 2020, Drew McIntyre vs. Randy Orton. This is the best match ever to be won with a backslide. That's what I remember about it, and I'm not re-entering the Thunderdome to double check. 2021, Edge vs. Seth Rollins. I don't know why the entry is titled that way. It should obviously say Seth Rollins vs. Brood Edge, the start of the trilogy that serves as the biggest highlight of Edge's WWE return run. 2022, Roman Reigns vs. Brock Lesnar. Congratulations, WWE! After 7.5 years, you finally got Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar on a best of list. And we all know why. There's only one reason. It's Roman catching that microphone. Chef's kiss. And 2023, Cody Rhodes vs. Brock Lesnar. For a story that was never given a reason to exist in the first place, Brock Lesnar vs. Cody Rhodes did have a very satisfying ending. A simple match of a hero overcoming the monster with effective imagery and a show of respect at the end. At least it helped give Cody something to do for a few months, like all great SummerSlam feuds should. And that's our list. Make sure, of course, that you like this video and subscribe to partsFUNknown, and leave us a comment down below if you disagree with any of our choices. But also check out this clip from our new video game channel, Control Freaks.
Look at that, Holly!